Good morning, and hey now, PSAW staff, clients, and friends joining us. Welcome to Thursday's class, part two of the great composer Ennio Morricone. As I promised, we have a very special guest, my brother, Sebastian Tovar. He was very kind to take some time out of his schedule and talk to us about Ennio's music. I thought that he really got me into Ennio's music a lot when we were growing up, so I owe a lot to my brother. Just a little background, my brother is a few years younger than me. He is an amazing painter and artist, so you should check out some of his work. You can go on his website afterwards and look at that. I'll post it at the end of the class. So he's a brilliant painter and one of probably my best friend too. So we're going to have a really nice talk with him. And yeah, I mean, I guess so. Lest anyone think this is a Meet the Biz, it's not. I'm going to be changing it up a little bit. And yeah, so just brief. You know, we did a whole class on Ennio's music yesterday, but Italian composer, wrote great film scores for The Mission, Cinema Paradiso, and 400 other films, and was classically trained as a teenager and adult, and became a famous arranger for popular artists, and then really became famous with Sergio Leone's work, the director, his classmate, with A Fistful of Dollars and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And after that, he became a huge international composer and writing scores for all different countries, and American films and European films. Just a huge talent, and super melodic guy. Wasn't afraid to work with different genres, and really in jazz and bossa nova and avant-garde pop and all these things. Didn't have any he just thought, it's either good music or bad music. There's only two kinds of music. So really just a genius of a composer. So having said that, let's go and talk to my brother, Sebastian, and find out a little bit more about him. All right. Now here we are with my beautiful, talented, brilliant brother today, Sebastian Tovar. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us today in our class on the great Ennio Morricone. I told everybody and the clients in the class yesterday's class that we were going to have you, and we already looked at some of his music and his career, but I said that when I was telling you about the class, that we were going to do the class, you gave me all these great insights and things, and so I thought that it would be, why not just come on and get a fresh face instead of my stupid face? Why not get a fresh face on there? And you can just tell us a little bit about, because he did pass away a few weeks ago, but we were planning, and I think you and I talked about kind of what you were like, when are you going to do a class on him? And then it just so happened to be that, the timing of it. But as I said in the other class, he lived a long, good, healthy life. So, so having said that, like, in your mind, I mean, what do you think he'll be remembered as? I mean, we talked about, he wrote 400 film scores, a lot of classical works, so many different genres. But I mean, what do you think commercially he'll be remembered for? And then what do you think personally that you like, and what do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Oh, sure.
It's such an honor. And
thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
But I think that Ennio Morricone is one of like the most versatile composers, like film composers, I think, of our time. And so I think so many remember him from his spaghetti westerns, which was the Good and the Bad and the Ugly score that really put him on the map. That goes like wah wah wah, which is like so iconic. And then there's a whole other group of people that remember him from, the Tarantino film, The Hateful Eight, which came out a year or two ago. And then a whole other group of people remember him for his like romantic stuff, like Cinema Paradiso, which was like an incredible big film in the 80s, and also The Mission. And so those are some of his, I think, most well-renowned works that people that are so iconic. As soon as you listen to them, you're just like, he puts you into that scene. personally, I kind of, it's like, it's so, well, it is what it is. It's kind of pretentious, but like, I just happen to not like that stuff
Uh-huh.
that the mainstream likes, but I kind of gravitate a little bit more toward his experimental stuff in like
Uh-huh.
the late 60s and early 70s. He was doing so many bizarre, weird things because he did a lot of horror movies. And so a, a lot of film composers at that time um, were making a lot of kind of straightforward, string heavy pieces. And even for horror films, for romance films, for what epic films, whatever. But Ennio Morricone was always kind of like going against the grain, and and he did that by kind of adding this female vocalist. So there's named Etta Del Orso, and she was one of the biggest collaborators with Ennio Morricone, and she has the most distinct kind of like wordless vocal scatting type voice that is very haunting, but also very sensual.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used her a whole lot. And so for some of the creepy stuff, I love her voice kind of just like is delicately kind of like dancing like over his works of all of his like weird instruments. And I think that's really effective. And then also sometimes he would just have these like a big choir, and he would use the same choir over and over again. And the choir was called I Cantori Moderni. I believe it stood for the Modern Choir, and they were formed in 1961. And a bunch of different Italian film composers at that time used them, like Piero Piccioni, Piero Umiliani, and it was founded by this man named Alessandro Alessandroni. And he was the whistler on The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. I know I'm
Oh,
getting
very cool.
crazy specific, but
No. And wasn't his wife the one that was the singer? The lady
yeah.
that you mentioned? Yeah. So it was kind of like
So
this family environment too. Yeah.
right. Well, and I actually just read this. I didn't know this, but Alessandro Alessandroni was childhood friends of Ennio Morricone. So they kind of,
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
I know. So they had this bond growing up for forever.
Well, he was childhood friends with Sergio Leone too.
Oh, no way.
They were
I didn't know that.
classmates. Yeah. So it's very cool that he kept in touch with these people that were like really talented.
That is so crazy. And
Yeah.
he began his career. I mean, he wrote his like first work at like 6, which isn't that like the
Yeah.
same age you wrote your first work, your Stregonona opera?
Oh, I was like 5. No, I'm kidding.
Oh.
No, I don't think so. I think I was like 10. No. Yeah, that was
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, but I know what a prodigy he was.
I know, seriously. And then yeah, so he was just like destined to become
Yeah, and it sounded like he was really interested in, although he had a classical training in music, that didn't stop him from doing easy listening music, lounge music, bossa nova music. You wouldn't really notice that this is like a quote unquote serious composer. You just thought that this was a composer that wrote really great sounding music that was just feel good, happy, and just like, he wasn't afraid to go into the pop or bossa nova world.
right.
Which I love, I mean, it's like he could have just said, I'm going to write, classical cantatas and masses, and that's fine too. But
yeah, totally. And that's what so many composers do. And also, like as soon as, and also those spaghetti westerns came out in the late 60s, and even then they were kind of successful and people loved them. And he could have stopped there and then, which is what most composers
and just written that for the next 30 years, the same thing. I mean,
exactly
the same kind of genre.
Exactly.
And it's so funny when you think that, like, Cinema Paradiso sounds nothing like A Fistful of Dollars or the Sergio Leone. You would never think that's the same composer. And so is that sound from the 50s, 60s? I guess it's mostly maybe 60s. Is that it's kind of avant-garde pop kind of a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe. So I was thinking what kind of separates his music from so many other composers' work at the time. And I think that he was so successful at having a beat. And I think you
Yes.
talked to your, you talked a little bit about like the importance of percussion in one of your other classes, and I think,
Yeah.
and like it's important ingredient
Yeah.
when that I think so many people just incorporate automatically, but at that time it was such a you didn't always do that with film scoring.
Yeah.
And so he was so heavy with like the bass guitar and and the drum, and
Yeah.
so instantly by adding that over sweeping strings, you kind of had something. Yeah, you had the structure of a pop song.
That's
So
really interesting. I never thought about that because, yeah, you're right. It would either be like all strings in an orchestra score or like all just kind of rock music from bands. But you wouldn't
exactly,
really have, I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of, it's
yeah,
like Bernard Herrmann from Psycho. He did all those strings in Psycho's music, but that was just strings. And then you think
right,
of like movies in the 60s, I don't know, like Easy Rider or other hippie
yeah,
movies that use rock music or something. But he
right,
blended the two where it's like, let's make a beat. I just am kind of thinking that
exactly,
that's a great point you made. That
yeah,
kind of bridged those two. And it was just like, hey, this music works and sounds great, don't you
totally,
think?
yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, this sounds amazing.
Right, right. And so I kind of feel the word like hybridization, it just kind of comes to mind of
Mm,
that hybrid of so many different
yeah,
elements coming together of, you kind of mentioned this, but of bossa nova, of chamber music, of
yeah,
classical, of pop songs, of a traditional Italian music. So many different blends of music were coming together in his style, um,
yeah.
which really kind of made this modern sound.
Yeah, because like everyone kind of does that now, but in the 60s, that was probably pretty unusual to do. Yeah, tell us about your experience with finding his music and how old you
Ooh.
were and what had happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, so I remember being in high school and, listening to a lot of Burt Bacharach and a lot of like you just Brazil 66 and like a lot of just like older music that was just so predictable.
Mhm.
And Burt Bacharach, obviously, like no shame, but he has a world. He has a very specific world. And when I heard Ennio Morricone's music, it was this completely different world, capable of so many possibilities. And I think I really gravitated toward the moody stuff.
Mhm.
So I feel like he was so good at making this kind of melancholy,
Yeah.
uh, kind of sentimental, like groove that you kind of get lost in, and a lot of that had to do with like the instrumentation and like the harpsichord he used a lot, and the wordless vocals again. And one of those songs that we can take a listen to is from this movie called Le Foto Prohibite de una Signora per Bene. I don't know what it means, but it's got this great vocal intro that is just bizarre that we can take a listen to
Oh,
right
great. Okay, so let's take a listen.
So I mean, that's like a crazy vocalist, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you don't know, she's not saying anything, but yet you feel like she's telling a whole story. It's complete,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, gibberish almost.
It's
Yeah.
complete gibberish. Yeah, it's total nonsense. Yet she is like evoking so much emotion that you're like, wait, am I making something up? And I think maybe that was because Ennio was so um, uh, thoughtful about what he was scoring. So I think that like sometimes when a lot of the themes in the 1960s of movies would have the femme fatale,
Mm-hmm.
or like that kind of that woman that you don't really trust as a protagonist, or the seductress, or the love interest. There was always this common trope of like the female protagonist, and that was people wanted to see that in horror movies, especially because they were often victimized too.
Right.
And so I feel like he incorporated that element of the victim or of the creepy heroine and made it and put it into his music with that female vocalist, which I think is so, it's just a weird thing. I mean, you don't really think to do that, to incorporate, the personality of some character in the film and put it over your music.
And so you would go to Amoeba and buy his CDs?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, the historic Amoeba in Hollywood. I made our dad go there every week before I could drive on the weekends and like spend at least $20-$30 on a CD, because they were often imported soundtracks, so they tended to be more money. But yeah, I mean, I think I gravitated so much toward this moody music because who doesn't brood in high school? I mean, high school is such a dark place anyway. So when I had his, he was like the soundtrack to my life kind of at that time. And so I think I loved that, the imagery that he was evoking in my own life.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that you're a brilliant artist, painter, and visionary. Did you listen to his music while you would paint, or
Yeah.
his music have any influence? Or I'm sure it did, but how did your art and how did his music affect your art, or would it just be simply you'd put on something and you would just look at a blank canvas or something? Or I don't know. Would you listen to him when you painted? When you would paint?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I definitely would, and I haven't really thought about that, and it's such a good question. But I think that because his works of music are so visual and again narrative, even if there isn't any story to it, but you kind of put, because it's scenes from a movie.
Yeah.
There's such kind of a narrative in itself. And so I think I kind of was, it really just made, when I would paint, when I would listen to his music, it made me get lost in his world, and kind of create my own stories based a lot on these wordless vocals, because you listen to them and you're like, what are they saying? It's not traditional scatting. It's not jazz. It's like,
Yeah, nobody was really doing that in the 60s for sure. I mean,
right.
maybe
Right. I mean, they had the
really.
Swingle Singers.
Yeah.
That was so like traditional.
Yeah, that was traditional. But yeah, it's interesting because if they did start singing lyrics, they would immediately tell you, and that's okay, what the song is about or the feeling of it. But when you take away the lyrics, it's all feeling. It's the voice is just used as simply, it's the same as a saxophone or another instrument, where you come up with your own story, your own lyrics, or
Totally.
and it's a feeling that's really powerful, more powerful, because you're saying, why is this girl singing? What is, she should be telling us a story, but
yeah,
it's uncomfortable because she's not. And
yeah,
it's good though.
Exactly. And yes.
I don't know. Maybe he just used the voice as just another instrument in the group, right? I mean, or I don't know if he was trying to make a statement, or I don't know. He just,
I know, who knows? It's fun to like interpret, but definitely like composers were using choirs, and this, like Henry Mancini was doing a lot of like, would have like a choir, but it was it was just, when I listened to it, I think Henry Mancini is great, but when I listen to it, it's just so, again, like predictable, and then and it doesn't have that soul.
Did,
But
did
yeah.
he use any of those elements? I mean, like later. I mean, like in his music in the '80s or '90s. Like, would you hear harpsichords and? Yeah, I guess so. I guess the Mission has a little harpsichord in it, but I don't know if he
Right.
would use voices, or I don't know if that was just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. Yeah. I think that style trickled in a little bit into the 80s and
yeah,
90s, but I feel like predominantly it was more orchestral, a little bit more
yeah,
straightforward orchestral stuff. But you're right, exactly. Like I think he was really interested in chamber music, and so when he did the Mission, that was like definitely like at his peak
yeah,
um, in that realm of music.
yeah. Well, thank you, my brother, my best
Oh,
friend, my person that's took the time out of your schedule
of
to
course, it
give
was
us
my
your
pleasure.
great insights. And guys, we should thank Sebastian, and he did such a wonderful job. And check out his artwork, sebastiantovar.com. I'll
Oh,
put it at the end, the credits. And I want all of you guys to go and buy at least one painting. Everybody has.
yeah. It's one through your homework assignment. No, thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me.
Oh,
And
sure.
I am such obviously a fan of all of your stuff and all of your videos. And
Oh, thank you.
you're an incredible teacher. And
Oh,
I'm,
well, thank you.
I'm so lucky to be on here.
All right. Okay. Well, I love you.
Okay, love you too.
Okay. Thank you, Sebastian, for that. That was a lovely interview. Um, I hope you guys appreciated that. That was we got to talk a lot about Ennio's work and music, and that was great. So thank you, Sebastian, and clients and staff and friends joining us. Hope you enjoyed that. This was a lot of fun looking into the music of Ennio Morricone, and yeah, check out my brother's work. Go to his website. You know, buy all the art if you want. That's fine too. So okay, thanks for watching. I got a good week. Uh, well, good. Tomorrow, the results for Ben Hur. Sorry, it's hard to keep track. Yes, it is Ben Hur. And yeah, we're going to have a great time. So, okay, see you tomorrow.